Absolute Power Origins issue 1, John Ridley writing with Aletha Martinez on the art. So this is a 3-issue miniseries tying in to Absolute Power, but more accurately, it's an origin story for Amanda Waller, which is kind of interesting actually, because I don't believe I've encountered much of her, like how she started.
Yeah.
You know, how did she become the Amanda Waller we all know? Maybe I'm assuming she was in the original Suicide Squad back in the 80s. Like, I don't know if that ever dealt with it or anything like that, but
Look,
I mean, you don't have to answer me. I was just
no, but now I'm curious as well, because I first remember her from the she showed up in the Jeff Loeb Batman Superman book when Luthor was president, and she was in his inner council. That was the first time I remember.
I mean, she was definitely
Amanda
around
Waller
before then.
No, I know, and I just don't, Checkmate. I also think of her as, so I don't know if she's like, Suicide Squad from the beginning or what, but she's just always a character too that I don't necessarily think of her origin. She's just, kind of evil government figure, right? She's always out for herself, threatening to blow people's heads off with the neck bombs and whatever. Actually, first appeared in Legends #1 in 1986, created by John Ostrander, Len Wein, and John Byrne.
I mean, it's Ostrander, it's around that time period, so it feels like she was introduced along with, if not with the Suicide Squad, and certainly around the same time, and by the same folks. So, this is interesting. So it kind of starts off by paralleling the origin of Batman to the origin of Waller, which does mean we actually see the Waynes go down an alleyway, which did make me laugh. Do you know what? Here's the thing though. This was nowhere near annoying though, because it wasn't a Batman book. There's something about it not being a Batman book that it means it doesn't bother me.
In a vacuum, I understand that, but I feel like since I've said that, I have had to see Crime Alley more times, and it's like the universe is just serving it to me and going, "Oh, you don't want to see this? Guess what? Amanda Waller book, page 1, Crime Alley."
It does feel like we see it in a comic book at least once a month.
Yes.
Without fail, once a month we'll see the night the Waynes were murdered. Even if it's just one panel flashing back to it, we'll see it once.
Yeah.
But here it kind of parallels kind of her origin story and how she lost her husband after the death of her
daughter.
Her daughter was apparently raped and killed by a killer called the Candyman, and Waller's husband went out to get some sort of justice, revenge, because the police weren't doing anything.
Vengeance. Yeah.
And basically, when he tried to confront Candyman, he ended up just getting killed himself.
So he kills Candyman, but Candyman also managed to get a shot off, and he ends up dying. And the police are kind of like, "Oh, hey, this was a revenge thing. We'd want to do more, but we can't." Versus
to be more specific, they say that he was committing a felony when he was shot, so therefore, like, and this is something that Waller brings up, is that if you say he was committing a crime when he died, it means we won't get life insurance, and the cops just kind of like shrugs and says, "I don't know what to tell you, that's just the way it is." But this all parallels with Batman like going after Joe Chill and sort of contrast the differences like between them, because Joe Chill, as we find out, obviously we just know this, goes to prison, right? He gets put behind bars for years, and it's actually Commissioner Gordon. I mean, he might not be commissioner at the time, but he's on the news on the press conference saying how yes, there's some rumors about like a third party intervening and like helping us catch him, and that may be the case, but we approve of someone, if someone's committing a crime, like a violent crime, we do encourage people if they can to get involved. And obviously this is the thing that Amanda Waller hears right after she's had this conversation with the police about her husband's death, and her 3 like surviving kids kind of standing behind her. Like you can tell that, like, I didn't really imagine them tying something Jim Gordon said, because Jim Gordon obviously supports Batman, to be the thing that gets under Waller's skin, because Waller's husband wasn't able to do anything about what happened to their kid, and that kind of sets off this righteous sort of fight that she thinks she has, and her hatred of vigilantes and anyone who's working sort of outside the system. But you could also argue in a weird way that she should just as equally hate the system itself. But
yeah,
you know,
I mean, it's Ridley's going out of his way to point out that there's two justice systems. You know, there's the one where the police will look the other way and the one that they won't, right? And she's kind of formed by that, where she's like, well, I have to control everything then. And that's what I mainly got from this. Is this really, because she lacked so much agency, she made a choice where she'll never lack agency again.
Yeah, she becomes a control freak, right? And the issue is then the story of her volunteering for this man running for councilman, and basically saying she'll work for free, she'll volunteer, she's the first one in the office, she's the last one to leave. It's just, I'm going to get you nominated, I'm going to get you elected, even though the election he's losing the election. Like, everyone thinks he's going to lose, it's a lost cause, but she's like, no, I'm going to do this. And one of the reasons why she's trying to have him win is because his opponent, and we never even see the opponent, like the guy who's going to be councilman, like, he's only referenced in dialogue, but when he does come up, Waller talks about how, he supports these masked vigilantes, you know, obviously, and it's something that I don't think we've ever seen explored too deeply in a comic, is this idea that how politicians in Gotham, just for example, Gotham, would use the idea of, like, okay, is one pro-Batman and one anti-Batman, and how does that fit into either side of the political fence? That's very interesting. So that being Waller's, like, main reason for supporting this guy, obviously it's not the only reason. The reason why she actually supporting him, as we find out towards the end, is because she has dirt on him that she can use, and the real, what we consider the real Amanda Waller, comes out by the end, which is that she's got him, you know, up against a wall, and she's like, hey, I've got incriminating photos here from a prostitute of your opponent doing something unsavory. You should use these and you'll win. And he doesn't want to. He's like, no, this is my redemption. I don't want to do that. I want to win this legitimately. I'm not going to use these cruel tactics. And Waller's like, hey, you have got your own dirty laundry. And not only that, I have been doctoring your books, so it looks like your wife's been siphoning money from the political, like, donations, and I've cooked them for months. They're iron tight. You're going to look so guilty. I will take you down. So here's what's going to happen. You're getting elected. You're going to go into Congress, and I'm going to be the one in your ear telling you what to do, what meetings to go to, what bills to help pass. It's the opening the door to power. And Waller's going to be the one walking through it. That's the way she puts it.
Yeah. And not only is it the door opening, she designs her door. She makes this all happen. That's why she's been working those late hours, right? She's put her mind to something. So we're seeing that drive that leads her essentially to, you know, because this didn't have to be an absolute power tie-in, right? This could have just been an Amanda Waller origins type thing.
It still doesn't have to be, really. This could just work, because I mean, it even says on the cover Waller year one, and you could have sold it as that, but I think, would that sell as well, or would it sell better as an absolute power tie-in?
Right. You know? But you can see that this is where the woman that creates those Amazos that steal powers comes from.
Yeah,
right?
it's the start of that journey.
So, you know, it ends up very, very nicely along that way.
Yeah. So yeah, and you know, the coloring here and the art is a really good job. Like, particularly that scene where she's waiting for the congressman, or the potential councilman, I should say, and she tries to present him with this evidence, this smear material, whatever you want to call it. You know, everything's in shadows, everything's in these blue hues, everything's, like, you know, against the night sky. It's very shady, like we're making some kind of, like, dodgy deal.
Yeah, she's working in the she's working in the shadows. Yeah,
it's Amanda Waller. It's what she does. So all of that does a really good job of, like, really selling you who this character is, and that she is this deeply committed to this, to the point where she's basically neglecting her kids. I mean, she does go on a bit of a speech at one point about how the kids will never understand that I'm doing all this for them. But I almost feel like that by the end of this miniseries, there has to be a little bit of either hypocrisy or the realization that it's not about them anymore. Because Amanda Waller in present day DCU, has she ever talked about kids? I don't think she has.
I don't think she's ever talked about her family. I mean, we were shocked when it was revealed that one character was her nephew
Yeah.
right?
So my expectation here is not that this is not some sort of mistake that is going to feel like a loose end by the end. If anything, I think this idea that she's so devout to this power hungry thing that she is going to just completely be disconnected from her kids by the end of the story, unless something bad happens to them, they're all just dead, which is also possible.
Could be. I mean, because she does talk about how she's buried 2 kids already, and her husband. So, yeah, maybe that is. It just keeps. They say that when you go for revenge, you dig 2 graves, and it definitely feels like she's just digging graves for everybody.
Yeah. So that's that final page, that sinister page where it's the victory wave of the councilmen as they're winning the election, and Amanda Waller's just clapping the one. She's in the back, but she's the one that's actually in power, and we just get the close up of her eyes, and her narration kind of mirrors like Bruce, Batman's speech of like, I'm going to wage war on crime and blah blah blah. I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Whereas her ends with, I'm going to war with every single one of these. Well, F's. Yeah, it's censored, obviously, but yeah, you feel like this is a more maniacal, this is a more savvy kind of, like, I don't know, mantra that she has. Like, the character, like, I felt like I was almost, and I'm sure there's more political things you could compare this to, like a House of Cards or something, but as I was reading this, I was like, this feels like a super sinister version of, like, Jimmy McGill, like, just putting all the pieces into play for the con, so that when everything drops, she's got all the material at the ready and she's got the upper hand. So it shows that she's very shrewd. But yeah. Yeah. And also we should mention that the reason the dirt she had on the councilman was that he'd accepted money from the gang that was behind Candyman's gang or something like that. Yeah. So.
And so he basically would look the other way, because he was looking the other way because he was on the take. That's what led to she reckons that's what allowed her daughter to be assaulted and killed. Yeah. And
obviously, as with a lot of John Ridley comics, it's kind of prodding at a lot of real world things. Something as simple as the cop suggesting, "Hey, what was your daughter hanging around with a man like that?" But that first page clearly shows that no, she was just a girl walking home, and this creep from an alleyway just sort of jumped her. Like there was no hanging around with shady characters, but that's the assumption made by this white cop. Like it's really hitting some of those beats along the way.
That's what I meant by that. There's 2 justice systems, right? And even though Amanda, they seem pretty like well-to-do on top of everything, on that too, that it does not matter because of how she looks. They're going to be treated differently. And she uses that as part of her fuel as well, right? Because she's pretty unassuming. She looks like she's just a mom when she gets into that and she wants to volunteer. So, but very, very interesting. I don't think that if this wasn't tied into absolute power, I might have skipped it, just because I feel like, again, Waller's not one of those characters I necessarily need an origin to. She's kind of fully formed in the way that she is. So, but yeah, it was okay.
I think that's selling a little bit short. I think this was pretty good. I think, as far as tie-ins go, I think it's a really good tie-in because it feels like it's telling a full, complete story. I feel like this will probably stand relatively on its own alongside Absolute Power as it's done. I'm definitely more excited about reading this than I am reading about a lot of the other tie-ins that are coming out.
This doesn't feel disposable, so at least it has that going for it. Yeah,
it feels like it's doing its own thing, and the art's pretty good. Like I said, the coloring's really solid throughout. It's a little bit flat in places. I wouldn't mind a little bit more expressive. What's the word I'm looking for? More acute expressions on the faces as opposed to some of the more broad things I think we may be getting in this art. But I don't think it's bad by any means.
But when it is good, like you said, that last page where it just pushes in on her eyes and it feels very sinister. It works really well there.
It's one of those art styles where I don't always love broadly what the drawing style is like, but I think the artist is very good at telling the sequential story with the art, right? Yeah. Choosing what to put in each panel, how to get certain feelings across, even if I don't always love the individual panels and go, oh, that looks like a great piece of art that I could put on the wall. It's always doing a really good job at actually telling the story. So, which arguably is the more important of the two types of praise that you can levy on a comic. Obviously, it's great to have both, but I think it's got the sequential stuff down really, really well and helps tell the story considerably.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's very good. Pleasantly surprised. I mean, I shouldn't have been really, because John Ridley's been pretty solid whenever he's been writing a book at DC. But it's the sort of thing where, you take one look at a tie-in, you see it's going to be an origin story of Amanda Waller, and you're like, oh, do we need this? And that's going to up to anyone to decide for themselves, really. But ultimately, this told a compelling story. It sort of gave me this sense of her drive and how ruthless she was even at the start of her journey. So I'm down for issue 2. I'm actually kind of looking forward to the next one now.
So I didn't realize this was only 3 issues, so that kind of changes my thing too. If this was, I thought this was going to run longer past Absolute Power. So that helps with the pacing as well.
Oh, that'd be wild if it went past the event.
Yeah, you never know sometimes with some of these, you know what I mean? Because we kind of know where she ends up, so I just feel like they can take it as long as, really, I guess, how detailed he wants to get into her origin. But yeah, 3 issues makes it a lot easier to try to keep up with.
All right, what are you rating it?
I'm gonna it's a 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an 8 out of 10. I think it's really solid, reads well. Whether or not you want an origin to Amanda Waller's a question you could ask for yourself, but I think this is a pretty compelling way of doing it. Do you need to read it for the event? No, obviously you don't. It's like the event will read just fine without it, but it feels, I'd say this is the sort of tie-in where it's like, okay, Waller's more on the brain, so now's a good time to tell a story about Amanda Waller, as opposed to, it's a bunch of event stuff that's going to...
And you can do a lot worse than John Ridley writing it too.
For sure.